Pape, March 10th, 2020. I'm actually recording the voiceover on March 14th, 2020. So this was last Tuesday. I'm talking on a Saturday evening here. And this is the coronavirus special from Honest Tree YouTube channel. So Tuesday marked the first day of the Tuesday night crit. Obviously, I was not at the crit. I was on this ride, so we had a different population of riders. Here is the exert profile of the ride. The blue line at the top is the most important. Every time there's a jagged edge to that blue, that indicates that I was going above threshold. So that's the MPA, the maximum power available. When that dips, that means that I've gone above threshold. So just looking at the profile of that ride, I can tell that I did a lot of effort on the ride, including more than normal. Sometimes when the ride is a little bit slower or the really heavy hitters are not present, that actually lets me, and also when the ride is smaller, it allows me to actually do more work. I don't know if it's just mental, but part of it is the idea that you can go hard and you're not really risking getting dropped or getting attacked or someone just, the group just blowing by you because you went a little bit too far. You can just skim that edge a little bit where you're working harder. So as I said, this is the coronavirus special. I was going to throw this footage away, not make a video, but then I changed my mind. And the reason I changed my mind was because I realized this might be the very last pop video I do sometime. And the reason I say that is at this point, here on Saturday, March 4th, 2020, I believe that I'm going to be taking a hiatus from all group rides. So I know there's no direct recommendation that people not go on group rides, but I think it's the responsible thing for me to do. And, everyone can make their own choices, but certainly here at the back of the group, I've got, 25 people in front of me, and I am in the slipstream of all these people. And who knows what I'm breathing in. Now, having said that, are the guys in this group likely to be killed or die from coronavirus? Probably not. But if we get sick, we potentially get other people sick, and some of those people might be more susceptible, and it might be more dangerous for them. Now, having said that, I think there's reasons not to get the coronavirus, even if you are young and fit. I wouldn't put myself in the category of being young. I'm not particularly young. I'm middle-aged. Most of the guys on the ride are middle-aged. So the thing that gives me some pause is reading that some people have had significant lung damage even though they survived the coronavirus. Now, I didn't get into the nitty-gritty of the details. I don't know if this is permanent lung damage. My guess is it's probably not permanent. Time will tell. But having said that, losing something like 20% of your oxygen exchange ability for months perhaps would not be good for a cyclist. Having said that, I guess if you're going to have some problem with your lungs, now is the best year to ever have that kind of problem, since a lot of the races are being canceled in our area. I was reading online that many of the races on the West Coast in particular have been canceled. I just saw something on Strava today saying the most recent USA Crits race had been canceled. I don't know if the whole series is canceled, but at least I guess one of the races that was upcoming was canceled. So this might be the year that not a lot of racing takes place, at least not in the springtime. Who knows what will happen in the summer. I haven't heard anything about our local weeknight crits being canceled, but my guess is the writing is on the wall, and there's a very good chance that at some point here in the near future, day 2 will be canceled. So here we are riding up Jupiter Road, and I guess I'm in the back. We're going to get a rear view in a bit. The reason why I don't have rear view entire video is because it got recorded over, because as I said, I didn't intend to save this footage, but after the pop ride on Thursday, I so that I had the rear view camera on, and the way it works is like a dash cam. It overwrites itself, so most of the footage was overwrited, however you say that. Interestingly enough, on Thursday, I did not have a functioning road bike to ride. So my main road bike was in the shop. I might produce a video later to describe the problem I've had with my Specialized Alley Sprint. I've got a warranty issue going on. Once it's resolved one way or another, I'll talk about it, but not right now. That was in the shop. My backup bike, the Cannondale Super 6, is on there, and it's been on the trainer so long. Last time I pulled it out and rode it on the road, had some brake cable issues. The brake cable's getting stuck. I need to replace the cable in the housing, which I actually do have on hand, but I just haven't taken the time to replace those. I've got a third road bike that's sitting without wheels. I just didn't have time in the 30 minutes between getting home from work and getting started on the ride to find the wheels and the cassette. It's a 10-speed Ultegra setup on that bike, and no power meter on that bike. So I couldn't get that set up. So what did I do? I pulled out my mountain bike, which is a full suspension mountain bike with wide knobby tires. And I get out on that bike on the road, and I thought maybe I could hang on to Pape for a while. Then I realized my rear derailleur on that bike wasn't working, and I was missing the biggest gears, the 3 smallest cogs on the rear. I can get the derailleur to go into those. So I knew I was pretty much screwed. It ended up that I went solo off the front, starting before the rest of the guys for a while. And then Pape caught up to me at Stinson Elementary, and I hung with them all the way to Fireman's Hill. Is that what we call it? I knew I wasn't going to be able to make it up the hill with those guys. And then I latched on top on Jupiter Road and was able to stay with B the whole time, doing some pretty intense cadence work. Imagine I was doing like 120 cadence for a lot of that ride. Spin, 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 and then coast, spin, spin again. It was kind of interesting. It was actually a pretty good workout. I don't have a power meter on my mountain bike, so I don't have any particular appreciation of how much power I had to put out to stay in the draft, to go up the hills with significantly more weight. Also, even though I locked out my suspension, there still is some squish to the setup, not to mention the tires, which were large and knobby, make an interesting sound on the pavement. Pumped those up to about 50 psi. So it was a good workout. I think that's one way to get a workout in the pop ride would be for me to ride the mountain bike on the Pop B ride. I think I could get a pretty substantial workout doing that. Might be something to consider in the future, especially with the weird thing we have going on this year, where it seems like riding for fun and just general fitness and having a good time is more the order of the day than actual racing, although that might change later on in the year. Having said that, racing's never been the end-all be-all for me. Just something that I've tried to do well in, but I don't do it that much. And while I've had a little bit of success in these local crits and things, it is what it is. It's not something that quite motivates me, perhaps like some other friends that I have, and that's nothing for me to hang my hat on. It's just that everyone has a different view about racing and its role in the world of cycling, and so in their world of cycling, your individual world of cycling. I think it can be tremendously fun at times, especially if you have this team component to what you're doing. And I've talked about this in other videos, where riding as a team, having team strategy, for me at least, makes it 1,000 times more fun than just riding for yourself. There's really only one way to win when you're riding for yourself, but there's like 20 ways to win if you're riding for a team, because there's things that you can do for your team, and you can feel good about teammate success, especially when you helped contribute to that success. So anyway, if we get back to the coronavirus, we think about the experts out there, and I'm certainly not an expert. It turns out I don't talk about my personal life all that much in these videos. I do work in the medical field, and I'd thought about bringing that up before, especially related to cardiovascular studies and exercise studies. Turns out I've actually published in the area of exercise, in the cardiovascular arena of exercise. Again, I'm not saying I'm an expert, but I think I'm probably better than the average cyclist in terms of interpreting scientific literature. I would say I'm probably definitively better than the average cyclist in that arena. It's not that something I really do. I don't turn to the scientific literature in exercise for the purpose of my own cycling. I have followed some podcasts and blogs and Twitter accounts, etc., from those kinds of research. But yeah, so I am a bit concerned, maybe more than a bit concerned about the coronavirus situation. I do think that we should be taking measures, and cyclists, as being members of the community, should be involved in taking measures as well. So I'll just leave it at that. In other words, I'm not one of those people who's saying this is no big deal, it's over and we shouldn't be doing anything. I am not of the opinion quite the contrary, but it's not really the venue for us to discuss the evidence and epidemiological stuff and all of that in this particular video. I'll leave that to other people in other videos. But I think it's probably worth talking about what we're going to do here for the next several months if this really blows up in terms of restrictions on what we're allowed to do, whether they are government imposed or self-imposed, and what would be fun ways of us being able to maintain our hobby in the face of what could be fairly strict circumstances. So when the Italy situation started blowing up in terms of the first quarantines that happened up there, I have a friend who lives in northern Italy. Her husband works for the military. So I'm able to follow along a little bit with the restrictions and the lifestyle things that have happened up there. And I was very curious to see if the cyclists might still be able to ride their bikes. In the first round of quarantines, as I understood it, and this was from a direct Facebook post from the US military directed to people there, people were still allowed to go on walks, people were allowed to ride their bikes. It seems like the mandate was to do so individually, not in groups. So I thought, okay, yeah, you could go out on a solo bike ride and you're still okay. When they cracked down further, the rules got more strict, and as I understand it, people were only allowed to leave the house if they had an approved official purpose for leaving their house. So you had to, as I understand it, you had to, say, download a form from the internet and then fill that out specifying what your purpose was, and it better be something that is approved. And as I understand it, going out for a joyride on your bike was probably not an allowed. So we could be in a scenario here where group rides are allowed in terms of what the government allows. We could be in a situation where group rides are not allowed, but solo rides or very small groups could be allowed. And of course, we might reach a situation where even solo rides are not allowed. This also gets to the topic of civil liberties and what the law holds for us. I'm not a legal expert, but I did read an article from The Atlantic which talked about the way the laws are structured in the United States. So in the United States, the federal government really doesn't have all that much or any control over what happens in, say, a city or a county. The federal government can restrict some things in terms of state-to-state limits, and they can limit what comes into the country, But all the stuff that's happening within Texas, for example, where I live, the state where I live, that would be controlled by the local public health authorities. And so the governor also has a role in terms of what is allowed and not allowed in the state. As is described in the article I read, the restrictions that are in place need to be the least restrictive possible, i.e., there's a balance between the restrictions they place and our civil liberties, our ability and freedom to congregate and to move about. Now, having said that, I have yet to read one legal challenge to any of the restrictions that have been put in place. So, for example, South by Southwest, it was canceled even though there wasn't a single documented case of the coronavirus in Austin. It was canceled by the mayor. The organizers of South by Southwest, I presume, could have filed an injunction, gone to court to try to block that, but they didn't. And they immediately had tweeted out that they would abide by that order of the mayor of Austin. So even in a case like that, I haven't seen any reports of any challenges to the restrictions that are in place so far. Now, of course, we haven't gone to the situation like Italy, which is essentially unprecedented in modern democratic history. China, of course, has put in significant restrictions on movement. And, of course, China is a different situation in terms of its government. They are not a democracy, and the power of the government there is, frankly, at a different level. So, remains to be seen what might happen in the United States in terms of what's allowed, what's not allowed. And, I guess we need to think about the optics of this too. Not that optics are everything, but at a certain point here, if everyone else is hunkering down and doing their part to try and limit the spread of the virus, the recreational cycling, big groups, might not look so great in terms of sending a message to our fellow citizens that we take this seriously. So, I just saw a bicycling.com, I think it was bicycling.com article saying that, it's good to be outside, you're more at risk for being infected when you're inside. Now, that might generally be true, but I don't think it's generally true if you're in your house in a quarantine situation. I don't think you're more likely to get infected when you're by yourself, who's on quarantine, than joining a group of 50 people to ride bikes together. I think you're probably at great risk in terms of associating on the bike. One thing caught my eye in that particular read that people with the flu and colds rarely, if ever, go on bike rides, on group rides. And I just had to chuckle to myself because maybe the person who wrote that article has a different experience than myself. But you get to these folks that are more serious about riding bikes and keeping their fitness up. Plenty of people go on bike rides when they have colds. You hear them hacking and coughing and sneezing and so forth. Sometimes people aren't so pleased when someone like that's on the ride. And I'll admit, I've been one of those people on the rides over the past several years. If I have a cold, I'm still going out. Now, this is a different situation right now. If I have a cold now, like I said, I've decided that I'm not going to be doing group rides in the near future here. But certainly in the past, I didn't forego going on a group ride if I had a cold. And I think I'm not the only one. I think there are lots of people that do that, and so I think that part of the article is wrong. Now, in the current situation, that's different. I think hopefully there are more people that will abide by the request that if you're sick or you think you're sick or you're on the edge of being sick, don't join the group ride. Looks like we have our rear view going up and even enough daylight right now to see what's going on in the rear view. So for your viewing pleasure, I guess we've had supplements to our YouTube video budget that allows me to take the few extra minutes to include the rear view. The rear view from the Cycle IQ, which I have a love-hate relationship with. Probably more hate than love, but it's kind of a pain to put the rear view on. I could talk about the technical issues related to that, but that would be boring, so I'm not going to bother doing that. Here we are about to take a left onto Parker Road here in our video. So as I recall correctly, I think we're going into a headwind now. The wind was from the south, and that means we'll have a bit of a crosswind as per usual. It's nice to be out on a beautiful day, the first pop ride since we've had the daylight savings time change. So we start in daylight and we remain in daylight for quite a while. So that's finally the dark night of nighttime pop is over. I kind of enjoy nighttime pop. Used to scare the crap out of me, used to make me quite anxious, but you do it enough times, then you get used to it. I remember I posted up a video before and someone said, "You guys ride in the middle of the night on the highway?" Yes, although I wouldn't quite consider this a highway. I think the footage the person was referring to was on Murphy Road. That's the next right that we take up here. And yeah, there's some fast-moving traffic. It's not a highway, but yeah, traffic is going like 45, 50 miles per hour on the road. Probably the speed limit is 40 on this road. And it's a good time being on the pop ride. I recently did a check on Strava to see how many pop rides I have done since I started doing the pop ride. And that's not an exact way to tell, but I look at one particular segment where that segment is unique to the pop ride. The other rides don't go on that segment. And the number I came back with was 210. So I've done more than that because there have been on a few occasions, for example, with a flat tire, that I haven't made it to the very top northern segment, which is the one that I use to calculate things. But so I'm in the range of probably 215, 220, something like that, pop rides. And I don't know, is that a lot? Does it sound like a lot? I don't know. But certainly it's been a big part of my cycling life over the past few years, and I can say it's really helped me and really enjoy the people I've got to know over that time. I started off doing the Pop B ride and eventually made the transition to the Pop A ride, and then I'd go back and forth between the Pop A and the Pop B depending on what I felt like, depending on what kind of ride I wanted, whether it would be something where I'd really spend a lot of time on the front pulling on the Pop B ride, as well as some big efforts in their go zones, and then wait for everyone else to catch up after the go zones are done, versus the Pop A ride, which is the kind of anything goes hammerfest amoeba, which is quite different than the pace lines of the Pop B ride, even though we do some Pop A kind of pace lines as well. I guess for me, the change from not doing the Pop E at all to just doing the Pop A was just related to increased fitness over time. Eventually, and again, this is not bragging of any kind, but eventually it got to the point where being on the front of Pop B was not the kind of stress that I wanted. I wanted a bit more stress, and I found that I could get more stress from the Pop A ride. I think there's a lot of Pop A riders that would get actually more stress on the Pop B ride if they were really working hard on the Pop B, but they just sit in the entire time on Pop A. It's actually potentially easier to be in the draft of Pop A than really working hard on the front of Pop B. But that's a story for another time. That gets to what kind of experience you want on a ride. Having said that, like if you're racing, definitely Pop A is the better thing to do because it gives you practice for kind of a racing type environment, although the Pop A is not a race and it's not exactly the same. But here's me going to the front a little bit, putting in a little effort here, and looking at my MPA, so 12, below 1280, so not too tired here, but definitely below below my baseline slash, what's the word I'm looking for? My regular MPA where I'm fully rested, which is, I believe, to be above 1300. And that, of course, changes over time depending on the kind of efforts I do. The exert modeling, which changes based on my fitness signature, how much stress I've gotten, how much work I've done, what my latest big efforts have been in terms of sprinting and maximal power, and also what my threshold power is. So looking at my heart rate, I have a lower peak heart rate than most people that cycle. So for me, 160 beats per minute is definitely fatigue. Definitely fatigue for me. My 160 might be like another person's 180. So I don't know why. Every person's different. I just happen to have lower peak heart rates than most people. So, and that's age adjusted, because your peak heart rate declines with age. Um, and here we are going south on Murphy Road. And this road is just great because you've got this super smooth concrete, no holes. If you get lucky and you have a north wind, you just fly on this road, and it is really fun to fly on this road. It's hard. It's hard. No doubt about it. You learn to stay in the draft. You go to the front when you can. You might put in a big effort when you can. Historically, on the Pop A, at this particular section, there might be a few guys that get a little bit of a gap. But you get a little bit of a downhill, and usually the entire group comes back together, even if there is a gap. And then we have a little bit of a tiny uphill that's coming up. But usually everyone's back together by then. So it gives guys enough time to recover and get back on and things like that. Just getting a sip of water here. It's kind of interesting on the Pop A. So I mentioned before that a lot of friends, a lot of teammates, a lot of guys on this ride are racing at this very moment that we're riding. And you also get people coming out on the Pop A because they don't like to do the nighttime pop. And this is really the first daytime pop, and it's sort of the beginning of their pop season, and they're coming on board to get in the swing of pop rides. Oftentimes on Thursday pop, you'll get the guys who raced on Tuesday showing up for Thursday. So sometimes it can be a bit more effort and a little bit faster perhaps on Thursdays during crit season than Tuesdays. And so every ride's a little bit different, but every ride also affords the opportunity for a different kind of workout depending on what you want to do. If you want to, so in other words, even if it's a slower ride, you might actually get a better workout or a different kind of workout, depending on how you run with it. But it's good to see new people that haven't been out for a while, people that are coming out to have fun on bikes. That's all we're doing, just coming out to have fun on bikes. Anyway, just want to wish everyone well in the cycling community that watches. Of course, the vast majority of the people that watch this are local people here in the Dallas area, and most of them people I know, i.e. the people that do the pop ride. But to the rest of you out there, I want to wish you the best in terms of your own personal health and safety related to you and your family. Of course, now is not the time to panic. I kind of laugh when people say panic. I haven't seen anyone running around in the streets screaming and yelling. I don't really consider going to the store to pick up supplies to be panic, nor do I consider buying toilet paper to be panic, although one could certainly argue that buying excessive amounts of toilet paper is unnecessary, and certainly one could argue that people that have snatched up all the supplies of medical protective equipment has not necessarily done our society a favor, especially when the medical professionals are experiencing a shortage of those supplies. But certainly there are people that have been anxious that I've talked to, but I don't know that that's misplaced. A little bit of anxiety that maybe helps people be a little bit more cautious, wash their hands a little bit more, take a little closer look at their hygiene practices and what they're doing. Yeah, probably not a bad thing right now. Certainly is an interesting time that we are in. While I had thought that such a thing could happen, it's a little bit weird to be in the situation. I don't know if my audio is going to be exactly linked up with the video. Sometimes my app on my phone that I'm recording the audio on doesn't, kind of skips a little bit. Anyway, we just saw Steve coming from the opposite direction, the lane, turning to join us, and he's joining us from having raced in the B crit. So he's come from the opposite direction and he's come in to join us. So that's just an example. Sometimes guys who are doing the crit will actually join the pop ride after they are done racing in the crit, whether it's the C crit or the B crit. If you do the A crit, however, you are not going to have the time to be able to join the pop ride. So just want to wish everyone well and have fun cycling. Maybe I should comment a little bit about Zwift, given the situation that we may be facing here. I think I'll do that. So I have quite a bit of experience on Zwift. I joined Zwift in beta when it was free, a long time ago. I did Zwift long enough ago that you would ride and you would not actually see another real person on the ride. You would just have these ghost riders that would go by, and you knew they were ghost riders because they were partially transparent. I remember some of the feedback I gave to Zwift was it's kind of boring to do this when there aren't real people and it's just yourself. So that was a long time ago, obviously. Zwift has changed a lot since then. What do I use Zwift for? So that's changed over time. Most of the time now when I've done Zwift, say, for example, in 2019, for example, on Sunday mornings, I would jump on the trainer, I would watch F1 racing, turn that on, and I would just sit on the trainer and ride on Zwift, and I wouldn't particularly care. I'd probably choose a flat route so that I didn't have to do much in the way of gear changing. I use an older kicker, Wahoo kicker, and of course I could set up Zwift and the kicker such that I don't have to change gears at all. I could set it up so that the resistance doesn't change based on the terrain, and in that kind of situation it probably would be ideal because I'm more focused on watching the racing or whatever it is I'm watching than I am at looking at the Zwift screen. So for me, in those situations, the Zwift screen's kind of to the side. I'm not even really paying attention to it. I'm not doing a group ride. I'm not doing a workout. I'm just putting in some time on the trainer. And usually in those situations, I'm riding at something like 180 watts, 200 watts, somewhere in there. So not very hard for me. And it's mainly just a way of doing something akin to a recovery ride. So this gets to the notion of I'm blanking on the word that I'm looking for here. Let me see if I could up real quick. So, well, I'll just turn to another thought for a moment here. But I think there's a benefit to just riding easy times. This is not um, any kind of new information. Sometimes you just need to ride easy. This works your muscles, this works your mitochondria. You are spinning, you are doing work. But the benefit of riding easy is that you are not increasing your stress hormones. At least that's the theory. So you're not putting undue stress on your body, which means that you're doing some work that you don't really have to recover from. That's why you sometimes ride slow. And being able to add, for example, an extra hour of that, an extra 2 hours of that, I think has some benefit. Now, that's one way that you can use Zwift. I've certainly done, let's see, I think it was a couple of years ago, I did like the FTP Builder program from Zwift. So that's a built-in training plan in Zwift. I don't know that I really like that too much. After that, I did a lot of exert workouts. So those are structured workouts that I got from Exert. And there's a couple of ways of doing that. One way is to run Exert, in my case on my Garmin, but there's a lot of other ways to run the Exert workout. My Garmin controls my kicker, and the Garmin is essentially telling the kicker how much, what interval I'm doing, how long I'm doing it. I don't have to think about it. I can have the profile of the workout on my phone or some other device where I can actually see where I am on the workout. For example, what's coming up. Don't have to use that. In terms of what it looks like on my actual Garmin, it will say like you have 1 minute left at 250 watts, and then 10 seconds left at the interval. It will give me a beep and it will tell me what the next wattage level is going to be. And so I could run an Exert workout through Zwift, and Zwift calculates my miles, etc. Post that up to Strava, etc. I kind of like that better. I've been thinking about doing a video where I talk about how to choose an Exert workout. Not that I'm any kind of expert in that, but I guess I might be more expert than other people, some people. And I think that's something that some people may struggle with, is what sort of workout looks like. Again, there's Francois, he's on the right, having raced, going back home. People may have some struggles in choosing what kind of workout to do. How long should I go? What kind of workout? In terms of Exert, there's so many workouts in their database that it might be a hard time choosing. Now, Exert has a feature where it can suggest a workout to you and tell you what workouts to do. Something akin to Trainer Road, but with perhaps you can argue some AI component, if you want to call it AI, that suggests to you what kind of work you want to do. But it gets down to the level of stress that you want and the kind of workout that you desire. I can very easily tell on Exert how hard a workout is going to be. However, having said that, there have been times I've misapprehended how hard it's going to be, but it's sort of like that thing where you keep having to learn the same stupid lesson over and over because you've forgotten your lesson. But when the MPA goes down, that means you're working hard. So if you're doing a sweet spot workout on Exert, so let's say that your particular threshold power is 250 watts. If you are going below 250 watts, your MPA does not change. That means your maximum power available. It's an Exert metric. In terms of the screen here that you're watching, it's on the bottom left of the blue strip there. So it's telling you how many watts you could expend you could put out in terms of your peak power in the next few seconds. If you are doing a sweet spot workout, in other words, let's say you're going 220 watts and your threshold power is 250 watts, your MPA is completely full. If we did a graph of your MPA, it would be a straight line. That's not to say that you're not working. It just your MPA is not budging. So if you see a workout where your MPA is significantly dipping, or the workout is predicting that your MPA will dip, then you know how hard you're working. And when you get experience with MPA, you know how hard it is, for example, from 1300 MPA down to 600 MPA. 600 MPA is exhaustion. At least for me it is. It means you're on the edge. It means that at that particular moment, you can only put out 600 watts. And for me, that means I'm quite tired. But maybe I can do a video on that, on how to choose an Exert workout. I know most of the people watching this video don't use Exert, but a lot of people might use Trainer Road, and I guess Exert would argue that Trainer Road is sort of like Exert for dummies. If you want Trainer Road to, sort of have a coaching plan that tells you what to do, Exert would be for more people that know what they want to do or have an idea of what they want to do. There's other benefits of Exert that are separate from the workouts, including my ability to look at my MPA on my Garmin as I'm in a race or as I'm in a group ride. That tells me how much I have left in the bank that I can spend. But I've talked about that in other videos, and I could talk about it in another video if there was any desire for that. So I won't bore you guys with more exert stuff unless you particularly wanted it. If you want it, tell me in the comments. I know for a fact that if I talked more about exert or did some exert tutorials, those would be more successful on the channel than a video like this. And the reason I know that is because of the views I've gotten when I did my exert tutorial, and that by far, like by an order of magnitude, or maybe more than one order of magnitude, it's been the most popular video that I've done. So this is a case where, sometimes you just do what you want to do, even though you know something else would be better for your channel, better in quotes, i.e. if the only goal of your channel is to be quote-unquote successful or get subscribers or get views. I think my purpose in life is to document the pop ride. And God put me on this earth. His purpose for me was to document the pop ride. Now, I might have protested and said, maybe I should be an astronaut. No, you need to document the pop ride. Maybe I should be serving people in a nonprofit and helping people across. No, your job is to document the pop ride. I'm just kidding about that, but part of this purpose of this channel has just been for me to document the rides that we do. And I don't know that it really matters. I feel like I've documented enough that there's no way in heck I'm going to be watching all these later. I wonder if I'll watch them. I've always thought that it would be nice to be able to watch them when hopefully I'm still alive a long time from now, that I could look back and see old friends and see what we did and have some good thoughts and memories about that. But having said that, it's kind of like a journal. You write, if someone writes this huge journal, is anyone ever going to really read it, including their kids or their grandkids? Maybe. I don't know if any of you have ancestors that have written a journal. I've read some things at times that I thought were interesting. It would be interesting, for example, if we could read about the 1918 pandemic. I was reading a Wikipedia article about the pandemic and some other articles about it, including what happened in Philadelphia and St. Louis. That might be interesting to read about if you haven't done that, where St. Louis implemented a lot of social distancing and canceled a lot of things, sort of like what's going on now, but Philadelphia didn't, including not canceling the schools as soon or for as long, and they also didn't cancel a large parade, and a lot of people got sick after the parade. And I guess the deaths in St. Louis were about 1/3 the per capita deaths in Philadelphia. So that's the flu, not quite the same thing as COVID, but kind of similar. Be interesting to see. It'd be interesting to hear from my relatives, my ancestors that lived at that time, what that experience was like for them. I have other writings from ancestors that included some pretty cool things from around that era, like the 1920s or 1910s, and it's pretty cool to have that. So hopefully this won't be the only thing we have me talk about riding a bike. But this is Renner Road, and I like to do an effort on this particular segment once in a while. And this is my first time to actually see what happened. Did we drop some people? I can't tell. Looks like Neil behind me is blocking my view. I can't tell to what extent we put the hurt on the rest of our compadres. But yeah, it's fun to do. It's a little bit of an incline, and and it's a good place to put in an effort. Here we're getting close to the freeway, and we usually have to stop here. How far am I into this video? 44 minutes. It's a long time to talk. Better get a drink of water. I just dumped water down on my pants, so that's good. Yeah. This is the light, the new light. No, this isn't the new light. The new light was the one before this. Or was this the new light? Anyway, we have a new light here. We don't like the new light. We need less lights, not more lights. But lights are the great equalizer. They help keep the group together. And certainly all of us at times have been saved by the light. So it contributes to the dynamic of the ride. Well, I think I'm going to wrap it up at this point. So this might be the last pop ride video for a long time. And I don't know for how long. But that's why I'm putting it up. Putting this out there for posterity. In the time of the coronavirus, this is us. We are the bicycle riders of the northern part of the Dallas Metroplex. We ride our bikes. So, a salute to everyone out there having a good time, getting fit, going fast, hanging out, making friends. It's a good time. Checking out. I'll talk with you guys later. Bye-bye.